Your things are out there. The room isn't yours anymore. That's what I heard from my daughter-in-law, while my son stood by in silence. What I found in the back of that garage changed the meaning of home, family, and dignity forever. Subscribe to the channel for stories that can't be forgotten. I look through the grimy window of this garage and see the garden I once planted with these calloused hands. The red roses are still blooming, oblivious that I'm no longer welcome to water them. 52 years I lived in this house. 52 years watching its walls grow, its rooms transform, its memories accumulate in every corner. When I arrived here, I was a young, pregnant wife, carrying little more than a cardboard suitcase and dreams too big for such a small house. My husband worked from sunup to sundown in construction, and I'd hang laundry in the yard while feeling my son move inside me. We were poor, but there was warmth, there was hope, there was love circulating between the aluminum pots and the mended sheets. I remember the day we painted the baby's room with leftover paint from the neighbor's renovation. Sky blue, because we didn't know if it would be a boy or a girl, but we wanted it to be beautiful. My husband balanced on a wobbly chair to reach the ceiling, and I held his legs, laughing at the splatters that fell on my hair. "It's going to be beautiful," he'd say. "Our son will have the most beautiful room in the world." I sewed little curtains from fabric scraps, painted gold stars on the wall with tempera paint, and glued wallpaper made from colorful magazine pages. It was simple, but it was ours. My son was born on a December dawn, crying as if he wanted to wake the whole world. I brought him home wrapped in a blanket I'd knitted during 9 months of waiting. In that sky blue room, I spent sleepless nights rocking him, singing lullabies I learned from my mother, counting stars through the window when he couldn't sleep. Years passed. My husband died young, leaving me with a 12-year-old boy and a pension that barely covered the daily rice. But I didn't give up. I sewed for others, sold baked goods at the school gate, milked cows in the pre-dawn hours to deliver to the neighborhood. My hands grew rough, my back ached, my eyes teared up from so much embroidery by lamplight. But my son grew up. He studied. He graduated. Now he's in there, in the house, in a living room with a big TV and a leather sofa, married to a woman who speaks with a high-pitched voice and wears expensive perfume. He has 2 children who barely know me, who whisper "Grandma's weird" when they think I can't hear. And here I am, in the back of the garage, sitting on a plastic chair between dusty boxes and broken tools. How did we get here? How did love turn into embarrassment? How did the room we painted together become not mine anymore? The questions echo in this cold space, unanswered. Only the silence of a lifetime reduced to plastic bags and cardboard boxes. It was Tuesday when everything changed. I was here in the garage, organizing my things for the 1,000th time. Not because they needed organizing, but because touching them reminded me they still existed, when I heard footsteps approaching. I thought it was my son bringing more stuff that didn't fit anymore to dump out here with me. But it wasn't him. It was my youngest grandson, the 8-year-old, holding a small plate with 2 cookies and a glass of milk. His big eyes stared at me with a mixture of curiosity and fear, as if I was some strange creature that had appeared in the yard. "Mommy sent me to bring these," he said, extending the plate with his trembling little hands. "She said you're sick, and that's why you live back here. Not the grandma who raised your dad. Not the woman who built this house with her own hands. Just a sick old woman who needed to be kept separate." "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied, taking the plate and trying not to show how those words cut me inside. "I'm not sick, no. I'm just staying here for a while." He looked at me with that cruel frankness of children. "Why doesn't Grandma live inside? It has a warm bed and a TV. This place is just junk. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his grandmother had been kicked out of her home? How do you say that his father, whom I raised with so much sacrifice, chose silence when it came to defending me? How do you tell him that the room where he slept as a child is now his mother's office? Sometimes we need a little quieter place," I made up, sitting on the edge of a box to be at his eye level. To think, to remember beautiful things. Like what beautiful things? He asked, inching a little closer. And then something happened that I didn't expect. I started talking. I told him about the sky blue room, about the gold stars, about the day his father was born. His eyes widened as I described how I sewed his first outfit, how I sang him to sleep, how I taught him to take his first steps in this very house. Daddy was born here? He asked, incredulous. Right here. In that room, that's your mom's now. He was quiet for a moment, processing that information. Then shyly, he asked if he could see my old things. I showed him the yellowed photos, the handwritten recipes, the patchwork quilt. Each object sparked a new question, a new story. When his mother called out from the kitchen for him to come back, he hesitated. Grandma, can I come back tomorrow? To hear more stories? My heart leaped in my chest. You can, my dear. You certainly can. He ran off, leaving me alone with a strange feeling. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. A child had seen me. A child had asked about my life. A child had wanted to come back. Maybe not everything was lost. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I combed my hair with more care, put on the least rumpled blouse I had, even applied a little old lipstick I found at the bottom of my purse. My grandson had promised to return, and I wanted to be presentable to receive him. I tidied up the little corner where we sat the day before, improvising a table with an overturned box and covering it with an embroidered towel I found among my things. I set aside a few more photos, some objects that might spark his curiosity. I even made some tapioca cookies in an old tin, using the portable stove my son brought me when he discovered I had no way to heat food. The boy appeared in the middle of the afternoon, but he wasn't alone. Trailing behind her was my daughter-in-law, with that determined stride of someone who's come to fix things. Her heels clicked on the concrete floor of the garage, echoing like a warning. I don't want you filling the boy's head with these old stories anymore, she said, not even bothering to greet me. He came home yesterday talking about blue rooms and who knows what else, questioning me about things that aren't his business. My grandson peered at me from behind his mother's legs, his eyes sad, like someone who didn't understand why he was being pulled away from something he enjoyed. But I was just telling him about when his dad was little, I tried to explain. Their family memories, your history. History that doesn't matter anymore, she cut in. The boy needs to worry about the future, not this past of hardship. You lived in a terrible situation here. That's not an example for anyone. Hardship. The word left her mouth like a curse, as if the years of sacrifice, of love, of fighting to give them the best we could, was something shameful, as if having little money meant having little worth. We were poor in money, but rich in love, I replied, my voice trembling. Your husband grew up knowing he was loved, protected, cared for. That's not poverty. It's the past, she retorted. And the past stays in the past. I don't want my children hearing these laments about tough times. They have everything they need now. They don't need to know what it was like before. I looked at my grandson, still clinging to his mother's legs, glancing between us as if watching a movie he couldn't understand. I wanted to tell him he had a right to know his history, that children need roots to grow strong. But I saw in her eyes that any words from me would be useless. Come on, honey, she said, pulling the boy by the hand. Grandma needs to rest. But Mommy, she was going to tell me more. She's not going to tell you anything. Let's go home. He turned back as he was being led out of the garage, giving me a discreet wave. I waved back, swallowing the tears that insisted on welling up. After they left, I sat in the plastic chair and hugged the patchwork quilt. Every little piece of fabric held a story. A scrap from the gown I wore in the hospital when my son was born. A piece of the dress I sewed for his first communion. Left over from the curtains I made for his room when he started school. Stories that, according to my daughter-in-law, didn't matter anymore. The following days dragged by in a heavy silence. I watched the comings and goings of the house through the small garage window, like a stranger peeking into someone else's life. I saw my daughter-in-law leaving in the morning in the new car, all dressed up, taking the boys to the private school across town. I saw my son coming home late at night in a suit and tie, carrying a leather briefcase that seemed heavier than the bricks he used to haul as a construction worker. It was strange to think about. My son, the same one who played with toy cars on the dirt floor of the backyard, now ran a construction company and built houses for wealthy people. The same boy who used to ask me to tell him stories before bed now couldn't even look me in the eye when he passed me in the yard. One afternoon, he came to the garage. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, as if he didn't know what to do with them. "How are you, Mom?" he asked, but his voice sounded formal, distant, as if I were just another client. "I'm fine," I lied. "And you? You look tired." He shrugged. "Working a lot. The company's growing, we have several projects." He spoke for a few minutes about contracts, about buildings he was constructing, about business trips he would be taking. I listened, trying to find in that 40-year-old man dressed like a businessman, the little boy who used to run into my arms when he got home from school. "Remember when you wanted to be a firefighter?" I asked during a pause. "You said you were going to save everyone from fires." He sighed, looking at the floor. "Mom, that was a long time ago. You were 6. You asked me to sew you a red cape to play firefighter. I stayed up all night sewing." "Mom, stop it!" His voice came out harsher than he probably intended. "Those things don't matter anymore." "They matter to me," I replied softly. He was silent for a while, scrolling through his phone, which kept buzzing with messages. When he looked at me again, his eyes had a hardness I didn't recognize. "Mom, you need to understand. My life is different now. I have responsibilities, a family to support, a reputation to maintain. I can't keep living in the past. And am I part of this past you want to forget?" He didn't answer, but his silence said it all. "The house looks nice," I commented, trying a different subject. "I saw you renovated the kitchen." "Yeah, we put in an island, imported appliances. It's modern." "And my old stove. Threw it out. It was too old, didn't match. That stove where I cooked for him for over 20 years, where I made him oatmeal when he was sick, where I prepared his favorite food for every birthday, where I heated milk in the middle of the night when he had nightmares. Thrown out because it didn't match the new decor." "I understand," I murmured. He put his phone away and prepared to leave. "I have to go. I have a meeting." "Son," I called as he reached the door. "Are you happy?" He stopped, his back to me. For a moment I thought he might turn around, say something truthful, remember who we were before all this. But he just shook his head and walked out, leaving me alone with the echo of his retreating footsteps. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going through my things, looking at old photos, rereading old letters. I found the card my son wrote me for Mother's Day when he was in 2nd grade. The teacher had asked the students to write about their mothers, and he, with that shaky child's handwriting, had written, "My mom is the best person in the world. She makes yummy food and gives me kisses when I get hurt. When I grow up, I'm going to take care of her forever." Forever. Where had that innocent promise gone? I remembered the night he had a high fever when he was about 5. I didn't have money for a doctor, so I spent the whole night putting cold compresses on his forehead, giving him homemade remedies, praying the fever would break. He was delirious and called out to me, "Mommy, don't leave. Stay with me." "I will, my love," I'd reply. "Mommy always stays." And I did. 3 days without leaving his bedside, sleeping in the chair, waking up every half hour to check if he was breathing properly. On the 3rd day, the fever broke. He opened his eyes and smiled at me. "Thanks for taking care of me, Mom." I also remembered the day he came home from school crying because some older kids had made fun of his worn-out shoes. I found him sitting on the front steps, sobbing with a pain that seemed too big for his small frame. "They said I'm poor," he said between tears, "that my shoes are ugly." My heart broke. I scooped him up and took him inside. I grabbed my Sunday best shoes, the only decent pair I had, and showed them to him. See this patch here on the side? I asked, pointing to a small hole I'd mended. And how the heel is a little worn down. My shoes aren't perfect either. But you know why I wear them anyway? Steps to the neighbors' houses to ask for sewing jobs. Steps to the hospital when you were sick. Your shoes have important steps too. Steps to school so you could learn. Steps playing in the yard. Steps growing up. Holes in your shoes aren't something to be ashamed of, my son. What's shameful is having feet too small to take big steps. He hugged me tight that day. When I grow up and have money, I'm going to buy new shoes for Mom. Can I come in? Of course, my love, I replied, quickly tucking the letter away. He entered slowly, looking around curiously. It was the first time he'd visited me since I'd been in the garage. Why do you live here? He asked, as direct as only teenagers can be. I took a deep breath. Once again, how to explain the inexplicable. My grandson sat on a box and watched me, waiting for an answer. There was something in his eyes, a seriousness that didn't quite fit his 12 years, as if he already knew the adults in the family weren't being completely honest. Your mom thinks it's best I stay here, I started, choosing my words carefully. She says I need a more quiet space. But you don't seem sick, he said, frowning. And it's really cold here. Why did Grandpa let this happen? The question hit me like a punch. How to explain to a child that his father had chosen silence when it came to defending me? How to tell him that the man he admired had abandoned his own mother? Your father is going through a difficult time. I tried to soften it. Difficult how? He has a new car. Mom bought that expensive ring last week. We're going to Disney World at the end of the year. I realized he wasn't understanding the kind of difficulty I meant. For him, difficulty was not having money for things. He couldn't grasp the difficulties of the heart, the choices that wound the soul. You know, my grandson, I began, pulling him closer to sit beside me. Sometimes people change when their lives change. Your father wasn't like this when he was little. What was he like? And then I started to tell him. I told him about the loving boy he had been, how he helped me around the house, how he dreamed of being a firefighter to save people. I talked about the Sundays we spent inventing games because we didn't have money to go out, about the recipes we created together in the kitchen, about the stories I made up for him before bed. Dad did that? He asked, incredulous. He did, and he loved it. He even made up characters for the stories himself. My grandson was quiet for a while, processing that information. Then suddenly, he asked a question that caught me off guard. Grandma, why did Mom say you were making up stories to fill my head? My heart leaped. When did she say that? In the car on the way back from school. She was talking to Aunt Carol on the phone. Said you had an old lady's habit of making up nice stories about the past, that it wasn't good for kids to hear that stuff. I felt a mix of anger and pain rising in my chest. And what do you think? Do I seem like I'm making it up? He shook his head vigorously. No, I'm sure you're not. Because he hesitated as if sharing a secret. Because I found some things in the attic. What things? Photos. Lots of old photos. Dad when he was little. You when you were young. A very simple house that doesn't look anything like our house now. And there's a box with letters Dad wrote when he was a kid, talking about being a firefighter and about you. My heart nearly stopped. Where are those things? In the attic, hidden in the back. Mom doesn't know I found them, but Grandma, there's something strange. What? The oldest photos, from back when you were poor, Dad is always smiling. In the photos from now, he looks sad. Even with everything we have, that child's wisdom sent a shiver down my spine. At 12 years old, he had noticed something the adults refused to see. That happiness isn't measured by the size of your bank account. And you know what else? He continued, lowering his voice as if sharing a big secret. Yesterday I heard Mom saying you two were really close when he was little, and that's why he can't stand up to you. She said he's too weak with you. Weak? My son was considered weak for loving his mother. Those words echoed in the cold garage like a final verdict. The next morning, the storm that had been brewing finally broke. I woke up to angry voices coming from the house. My 12-year-old grandson was being yelled at in the kitchen. "How many times have I told you not to talk to Grandma?" my daughter-in-law was shouting. "I'm tired of warning you." "But Mom, she was just telling stories about Dad when he was little." "Lies, it's all lies from an old woman trying to get attention." I heard a chair scrape and heavy footsteps approaching. My daughter-in-law appeared in the garage doorway like a hurricane, her eyes blazing with anger. "Aren't you ashamed?" she said, pointing a finger at me. "Filling the children's heads with these made-up stories." "I haven't made anything up," I replied, getting up from my chair. "I just told them about their father's childhood." "A childhood of poverty, of hardship. That's no example for anyone." "It was a childhood of love," I retorted, feeling something break inside my chest. "Your husband was raised with a lot of love, even without money." "Love?" She let out a bitter laugh. "What kind of love is this that lets a child go hungry, wear patched clothes, and walk barefoot?" "I never let my son go hungry," I exploded, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. "I went hungry so he could eat. I wore patched clothes to buy him new ones. I walked barefoot so I could buy shoes for his feet." "What a martyr," she sneered. "Is that what you call love? Emotional blackmail with sacrifices no one asked for?" I felt as if she'd slapped me. 50 years of sacrifice reduced to emotional blackmail. Every sleepless night spent sewing, every meal I skipped so there'd be food left, every dream I swallowed to make his come true. It was all just manipulation in her mind. "Where's my son?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to speak to him. He's away on a business trip, and when he gets back, he'll find this situation resolved." "What situation?" "You'll be leaving this house." The world spun around me. "How?" "I've already made arrangements for you. There's a very nice retirement community in town, a suitable place for people your age." "Retirement community?" I repeated, disbelieving. "You want to put me in a home?" "It's for the best. You'll get proper care, you'll be with people your own age, and we'll have our privacy back." "And my son agreed to this?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "He left the decision to me." A lie. I knew my son. No matter how much he'd changed, no matter how distant he'd become, he would never make a decision like this without at least talking to me. She was taking advantage of his trip to get me out of the house before he returned. "I'm not going," I said, crossing my arms. "It's not a choice," she replied coolly. "A car will come for you tomorrow morning. Everything's already arranged. This is my home. This house is in my husband's name. And my husband gave me carte blanche to handle this matter." At that moment, I heard small footsteps at the door. It was my youngest grandson, watching the argument with wide, frightened eyes. "Mommy, why are you yelling at Grandma?" "Go to your room," she ordered curtly. "But, go!" The boy ran off, and I saw him through the small window, crying in the backyard. My heart shattered. She wouldn't even let me say goodbye to the children. "Very well," I said, sitting down in the chair with all the dignity I could muster. "You can send the car. But know this, you're taking away from your children the only person in this house who truly loves them." She turned her back and left, leaving me alone with the wreckage of my life. The night was the longest of my life. I sat in that plastic chair clutching my patchwork quilt, looking at the boxes that held 50 years of memories, knowing that in the morning I would be torn away from it all. It was almost dawn when I heard a strange noise coming from the backyard. Discreet footsteps, like someone trying not to be discovered. I thought it was burglars, but I soon recognized the whispering voices outside. "Are you sure this is the place?" "Yes, ma'am." "Do you live here?" Through the crack in the door, I saw my neighbor, Mr. Antonio, with 2 other people I didn't recognize in the dark. I opened the door slowly. "Ma'am," Mr. Antonio said, taking off his cap. "Sorry to bother you so early, but we heard they were taking you away today." "How did you know?" "The boy," said one of the women I didn't know. "Your grandson came to my house last night, crying, asking for help. He said they were taking his grandma to a nursing home and she hadn't done anything wrong." My heart ached. My grandson had left the house in the middle of the night seeking help for me. "Ma'am," Mr. Antonio continued, "do you know Mrs. Regina from the bakery? And Mrs. Carmen, who owns the grocery store?" I nodded. I knew both of them by sight, long-time customers in the neighborhood. "Well," said Mrs. Regina, stepping closer, "Mr. Antonio told us your story, and we couldn't just stand by." "What story?" "The truth, ma'am. How you raised that boy alone. How you worked like a dog to get him an education. How you cared for him when he was sick. Everyone in the neighborhood remembers." "Remembers and respects," added Mrs. Carmen. "You've always been a role model mother and woman for all of us." I couldn't hold back the tears. No one had spoken to me with such kindness, such respect in months. "But it doesn't matter anymore," I said, wiping my eyes. "She's already decided. They'll pick me up in the morning." "They won't," said Mr. Antonio firmly, "because we've already spoken to your son." My heart leaped. "You spoke to him? But he's traveling." "He was," Mrs. Regina corrected. "He got back last night, and when he heard what his wife did behind his back, he was furious. The boy went straight to the airport to pick him up," Mrs. Carmen explained. "He told him everything. How his mother forbade him and his brother from talking to you. How she booked the nursing home without him knowing. How she was lying that he had agreed." "Is he coming here?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "He is, and he's not alone." At that moment I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. For the first time in months, my son was coming to me. He appeared at the garage door, his hair disheveled, still in his rumpled travel suit, his eyes red with exhaustion and tears. Behind him came my 2 grandsons in their pajamas, as if they'd been pulled from bed in a hurry. "Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "Mom, forgive me." I couldn't speak. 50 years of life, and I had never heard those words with such sincerity. "I didn't know," he continued, coming closer. "I swear on my life I didn't know she did this. When I left, she said she was going to resolve the situation by talking to you, finding a better room. I never imagined that." "Dad," my older grandson interrupted, "tell Grandma what you found in the attic." My son looked at the boy, then at me. "You saw the photos? The letters?" "He told me," I replied. "Mom, when I found those things, it was like waking up from a bad dream. I had forgotten. I had forgotten so many good things." His voice trembled. I had forgotten how happy we were. The neighbors discreetly withdrew, leaving us alone with that moment. "Daddy," said my younger grandson, coming closer to me, "I always knew you were wrong. Grandma never did anything bad." And then my son did something he hadn't done in years. He knelt in front of me and rested his head on my lap, just like he used to when he was little. "Forgive me, Mom. I lost my way. Forgive me." I ran my hand through my son's hair as I used to when he had nightmares. Even after everything, even with all the pain, he was still my boy. A mother's love doesn't get extinguished by hurt. It doesn't unravel with abandonment. "You're forgiven," I whispered. "You always were." "What is going on here?" she yelled. "Why aren't you guys in bed? And you," she pointed at my son, "weren't supposed to be here until tomorrow." My mother is a problem? A real family, who loved each other, who took care of each other. And my kids have a right to know where they come from. My son looked at her, then at me, then at the children. I saw a lifetime flash through his eyes in those seconds. "I choose my whole family," he said slowly. "My mother, my kids, and you. But you're going to have to accept that my mother is part of this family, or—" Then she turned her back and stomped away, yelling that she was going to her mother's house, and that he knew where to find her when he came to his senses. My grandsons clung to me tighter. "Is she coming back, Daddy?" the youngest asked. "I don't know, son," he replied, coming to sit beside me. "But if she comes back, it'll be with respect for Grandma. If she doesn't, well, you'll always have someone who truly loves you. Not in my son's pale blue childhood room, that's the kids' room now, but in the master bedroom of the house, the one with the big window overlooking the garden I planted." My son insisted. "You deserve the best room in the house, Mom," he said. "You always have." She still treats me coldly, still turns up her nose at my stories, but she's learned to live with it. And surprisingly, the children have helped in this process. My older grandson has become my official defender. When his mother tries to silence me or ignore me, he always intervenes. Let Grandma talk, Mom. It's cool to hear these stories. And my younger grandson has become my kitchen helper. I teach him recipes, tell him stories while we mix cake batter, replant the garden with his help. My son has changed too. He hasn't gone back to being the completely affectionate boy he was before. The years and responsibilities weigh on him. But he's found a balance. Once in a while, he sits with me at the end of the day to chat, asks me about the past, tells me about work. He started calling me Mom again instead of Ma'am, and I discovered it wasn't just me being erased. In one of our conversations, he confessed, Mom, I was erasing myself too. I'd become someone I didn't even recognize. I'd forgotten my values, what truly matters. My grandsons come looking for me to hear stories, bring me their homework for help, ask me to watch cartoons with them. And me? I've learned that dignity isn't something others give or take away. It's something we carry within ourselves. In those months in the garage, even humiliated, even rejected, I didn't lose my essence. I kept being who I always was, a woman who loves, who cares, who fights. Yesterday, my younger grandson asked me, Grandma, were you very sad when you lived back there? Not out of longing. I never longed for that suffering. I go to remember what I learned there, that true love withstands any storm, that real families rebuild when they need to, that dignity is a treasure no one can steal. The patchwork quilt is now on my bed. Each small piece continues to tell a story. But now there are new pieces. A scrap from the t-shirt my grandson ripped playing, a piece from the apron I received last Mother's Day. Life keeps weaving stories, and I'm still here to tell them. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share so more people can hear what should never be forgotten. What would you do in this grandmother's place? Comment below and help keep alive the stories that deserve to be remembered.